Conor, quick, sum up your vault book in one word.
Tankies.
Ugh. I don't know if that's a word, but...
You?
Spawn.
This episode of iFanboy is brought to you by GoDaddy.com and Squarespace.com.
Hey, welcome to another edition of iFanboy, the comic book discussion show. I'm Ron Richards, and as always, I'm with...
Josh Flanagan.
I'm Conor Kilpatrick, and today we're going into the vault.
Oh, into the old library.
Pull the vault door open after we do the code.
Yep.
Like a safe cracker.
When are you guys going to give me that code, by the way?
Clearance.
So, books. We talk about books we like from our collection of books that we have many of.
Comics. We read lots
Many
of comics. Our
comics.
libraries are huge. His is huge.
All right.
And lots to choose from.
It has flights.
Where are we at?
My choice today is Battlefields. This is the first, the complete Battlefields Volume 1. It's the first collection of the 3 Garth Ennis minis that came out last year that we love. Josh and I read and loved.
If you listen to our audio show, which, by the way, why are you not? If you listen to that, you'll know that Conor and I wanted to love these books more.
I think we did love them. I didn't think we wanted to. We loved them.
Well, I was going to say something dirty, but it didn't come out because I decided, I don't want to say that. So.
Garth Ennis, all throughout his career, there's been a lot of war books, war comics he's done. He
likes the war comics.
He's known for Preacher, and he's known for, he did a whole Hellblazer run and all kinds of things. But his first love, we've interviewed him about this, his first love is the war stories. He did the Vertigo war stories, but they didn't sell, so they stopped doing those. Yeah. He's done things like Enemy Ace. There's always here and there war stories.
Even in the middle of Preacher, there's Vietnam stories in there.
He's very fascinated by war, the history, and things like that. So Dynamite last year gave him basically carte blanche to do these 3-issue miniseries.
Really smart.
Because what sells for Vertigo, it doesn't make them any money. For Dynamite,
works.
Top sellers.
Yeah.
Well,
so, Boys also helps as well.
Right. And he does the Boys.
Yeah.
It's sort of,
that's true.
It's sort of like...
I think there's a quid pro quo going on there.
Can you have superheroes rape each other? I suppose I can do that. Then do what you want in the other.
So last year there were 3 miniseries. There were 3 issues each. So this is all 9 issues here. There was Dear Billy, which was a great one. There was Night Witches, and there was Tankies. And this is a nice collection of all 3. I thought personally... I like Night Witches the best, but I think Dear Billy was a close second.
I think Dear Billy is the strongest, but it's also incredibly depressing.
Right, well...
So there are 9 issues total in this hardcover.
Yes.
It's a great collection.
It's great. Dynamite,
it's a little oversized.
Dynamite collections are a little pricey.
Yeah.
That's the only downside of these books, but it's a nice presentation. And what you had in these minis were not just great stories, but great art in these minis. Great. Art. You had Peter Snarberg, Carlos Esquera, and you had Russ Braun.
Russ Braun, a lot of people out there might know he does Jack of Fables.
Yep.
And then Peter Snarberg did the second half of Starman, and the first half of The Mighty.
Yep. And
Esquera did... He did some of the Preacher specials?
He did some of the... He did Just a Pilgrim, maybe?
Yeah, and he did Just a Pilgrim for the Wizard imprint.
Ennis wrote that as well, Black Bull.
Yeah.
What you had here is Garth Ennis doing real stories from World War II, and they're not necessarily straight stories, but he took the ideas. Like Night Witches is about the female Russian pilots, that no one knew that Russia had a squadron of female pilots, and he found that out. He did a story about that.
They didn't get full-on planes. They got gliders.
They got old rickety planes and things like that. And they turned out to be very effective. They were very good pilots, and they were. The Germans dubbed them the Night Witches because they'd come in and they would just wreak havoc with their bombs. The Tankies was about just a tank squadron, which for me the most compelling part of that was I realized I never want to ever be in a tank in a war.
Awful thing to be in a tank, and it was just a bunch of sort of British enlisted soldiers,
Northern English.
Officer, well, no, because one of them was from London,
right.
And he was like a working class London guy, and then one of them was the lieutenant on the, I can't remember his name, but he was from Newcastle, so he had a Geordie accent, which is it's all written phonetically. It's actually it's as difficult to read as it would be to hear that person talk if you're unfamiliar with it. But all the things that if you think back to the really great war movies of the 50s and 60s, the things that film historians talk about, but people don't tend to see a lot today. That stuff is the stuff that's in here, and it's about if you've ever seen Paths of War, the Kubrick movie, that feels a lot like this does about the injustices that happen to the soldiers, specifically.
And then Dear Billy, which is probably the one that got the most acclaim, I think, was about a nurse who was she had a really bad. Her base was taken over by the Japanese, and this is in the Pacific, and so she had a really bad experience there. And then
Very bad.
her wreaking silent revenge on any Japanese soldier that came into her hospital.
And the funny thing about that was 3 issues, but it really
He tells a
felt like
really
lot more.
great, dense, compact, full-on story in 3 issues, which doesn't, these days everything is 6 issues, everything is 8 issues, everything. But he tells and they're all dense. You don't feel like you're slighted in the least in these stories. You feel like you get a complete story. You never feel like you need more or less. It's always a new arc. And then he just started it up again this year. The first issue came out last month. It was the one about the flying dudes. It'll be right here. But it was
The more recent one.
yeah.
Won't be here at all.
No, it'll be up there, and these are great. If you're interested at all, war history. But even Garth Ennis, Garth Ennis' strength, I think, is to telling a complete character story and making you feel them right away. He doesn't need 6 issues to flesh a character
By
out.
setting them up with relationships with other characters, that's his key to telling, to making characters real very quickly. He has in Night Witches, like one of the women has a relationship. The 2 of the friends have a relationship with each other, and then there's a relationship with one of the male officers. And by doing that, they instantly they make them all into human characters. Same thing happens with Dear Billy.
Yep.
I think that's actually one of the things about Tankies that I don't think he got to.
Tankies was the weakest, I think, because there was too many characters, and you never really got to know them.
3 issues is a short time to build those relationships, and
Yeah.
even as good as he is, but with the more people that you've got to tie in those relationships.
But I think Tankies might have been more about the actual tank warfare, not so much the characters.
But it was
Man, when
documentarian.
When a shell goes in one of those tanks and just rattles around and just
melts everything
just
inside.
pulverizes everybody in that tank. And
Anyway.
I want to be I want to be the mailroom guy. I want to be the guy who supplies all the mail, ferrets out the contraband.
Get a purple heart for your little paper.
I want to be the guy who takes Captain Spears' silver, puts it in a box, sends it home.
Sure thing, I'll put that in.
That's who I want to be.
Jeez.
When we come back,
I'm not getting behind that.
we got books completely on the other side of the spectrum.
Thank you to GoDaddy for sponsoring this episode of iFanboy. Web hosting from GoDaddy.com includes 99.9% uptime, 24/7 support, and free access to Hosting Connection, the place to install over 30 free applications sure to help you get the most from your hosting plan and website. Use the code FAN14 to get any .net, .biz, or .org domain name for only $7.49.
Ron, this is a book near and dear to your heart.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking, because recently we talked to Todd McFarlane, Image founder at San Diego, and recently he started publishing Haunt with Robert Kirkman, and he's drawing some pages in Image United.
You sure
and
it's not Haunt?
For us Image fans and Todd McFarlane fans, it's a big deal because he hasn't been doing art in
He hasn't drawn in decades.
10 plus years.
Yeah.
He's been doing the baseball, the action figures, the corporate mogul. But for those of you who want to know why it's such a big deal that he's drawing again, Image recently released Spawn Origins Collection Volume 1. And this,
They've had at least 3 volumes.
yeah, this is the first volume that I'm talking about here, and this collects the first 6 issues of Spawn that were started published in 1992 when Image started. And
The biggest book in comics when it came out.
it sold over millions of issues.
I think 3 million
Yeah.
copies.
I can't
when it came
imagine
out.
anything has sold more than that since then.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no, no.
ridiculous.
Maybe Archie.
Take the biggest book in comics now and multiply that by
30.
30?
300,000 would be Civil War sold 300,000.
Yeah, so 10. So
10.
take that by 10, and then you've got Spawn when Spawn came out.
Yeah. So if you're curious as to why Todd McFarlane drawing is a big deal, pick this up and find out. Released in 1992, this was right at the height of his popularity. He'd just come off of Adjectiveless Spider-Man, which he had launched himself. And that's where he started drawing and writing. He's probably a better artist than writer, but
Just a bit.
Salesman.
yeah, but great salesman. And Spawn was his character, which was basically his character Al Simmons, who is a soldier.
Yep.
He dies. He gets
The devil sends him back.
Yeah, he makes a deal. It doesn't make a deal, but the devil sends him back as a Hellspawn, which is a soldier in the devil's army. But Al Simmons is reluctant. He doesn't quite understand these powers he's given. He's very disoriented. He's living in an alley in New York City. And this is pretty much, these first 6 issues lay the groundwork for the next, now 200 issues of the Spawn series that's been going on. That's spawned off Sam and Twitch, which is a great crime series,
Yeah.
some great crime characters, and this whole kind of universe that he created.
Plus the Hellspawn books, though, even.
Yeah. This particular one follows, basically we get introduced to Spawn, who he is, we get introduced to the Violator, which is his kind of nemesis, that scary teeth thing that human form is a little fat clown.
Yeah.
And it also introduces Sam Twitch. It introduces the countdown timer, which is coming into play in Image United.
That was such a big deal when it first came out. Was you had a character with a finite amount of power, and I remember as a kid being like, oh, and then in the first issue he burns off a good chunk of it. I thought,
because he just uses powers.
I thought as a kid, I remember thinking, wow, he's never going to last.
It's hard. It's hard to say put yourself in 1992, but if you can put yourself in 1992 and look at the layouts and the art of what McFarlane did, I mean, there are some 2-page spreads that are just amazing. And what they did in '92 was it was printed on really nice paper. Yeah. It was totally
2-page spread you could flatten. You can't do that. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with this, but you can't do it in trade paperback in the same way. So it doesn't quite.
Spawn has a very Spider-Man-esque, almost kind of superhero kind of costume, the full face mask with the eyes type thing.
And the cape. The cape.
I love, as the series went along, the Spawn became more of a horror kind of, thriller kind of book. But when it started, it kind of teetered the line between horror and magic, but also superhero stuff. And I love the original Spawn costume. I love, it's got some spikes, it's got some chains, but it still has a definitive costume. And McFarlane's art, it doesn't matter what you think of him or anything, it's amazing.
You know what I see in that art now that I don't know if I ever noticed before? It reminds me, I see a lot of like Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns sort of influence.
Oh, he totally was influenced by Frank Miller.
He was. He had Frank Miller do a couple of the issues. It's very 90s. I mean, this is a book that is placed squarely in the early 90s. If you can't stand that, then you probably shouldn't read it. But like the fashions, the hairstyles.
Oh yeah, I mean it's totally early 90s.
There's way too many words by somebody who probably shouldn't be writing.
But the thing is, there's one issue number 5 is a powerful issue that actually got a lot of kind of questionable press or whatever, where Spawn goes after a child molester.
Yeah, he goes after a pedophile.
And brutally kills him, and just a really powerful issue.
That was a great issue. Yeah. It is a great issue.
Yeah. It introduces overkill or overt kill. Starts the whole Tony Twist debacle that ended up in court. But basically everything Todd McFarlane and Image starts in this one trade paperback, 6 issues. It's reprinted beautifully, and it's a great, for me, it's a stroll down memory lane from a history standpoint, and knowing about the titans in the industry. Whether you like it or not, if you're curious about comics, you got to read these issues.
It's interesting to me to look at the design, because it was the early 90s design was everywhere, and like the design of the book is like white and simple, and it kind of doesn't. It's a little off.
Volume 2 and Volume 3 have come out since then. After these issues, Todd McFarlane brought in some real writers, and he worked with like Frank Miller and Dave Sim and Neil
Gaiman,
Alan
Moore.
Grant Morrison, and stuff
Alan
like
Moore
that. Alan Moore, yeah. Not all of them have been reprinted due to arguments that Todd McFarlane's gotten into with those people since then, but some of them are in later issues. And it's really, if you missed out on that, if you're younger, if you never really, to see these back in print and to see kind of what they started, and then you can compare it to what's going on in Image United today, and you could see the difference.
I should point out, I get considered a snob about some art. Todd McFarlane was my favorite artist for years and years and years, and I credit him with a lot of love for the comic book art form. I mean, a lot. So, even depending, no matter what your tastes are now, like, this stuff mattered.
Yeah. Very important.
Very important. So, so Spawn Origins Collection Volume 1 from Image. Definitely worth checking out from a history standpoint. So, we get back, Josh is going to finish this up.
I had to pick one?
Yes.
We want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this episode of iFanboy. We've told you all about how Squarespace is the place to go when you need to build any kind of website, and now you can manage your entire Squarespace site on the go with the new Squarespace iPhone application. You can post and edit blog entries, upload pictures on the fly, manage content, save drafts, do all of that kind of stuff that you need to do in the palm of your hand. Go to squarespace.com right now for a free trial and check out the iPhone app while you're at it. Make sure to use the promo code iFanboy.
So, Josh, did you come to school prepared?
I did.
Okay.
He did his homework.
Turns out I read some comics, and I'm able to find one to talk about. I want to talk about Unknown Soldier from Vertigo Comics by Josh Dysart, and I'm going to just look to make sure I don't... Alberto Ponticelli. I could have tried to, do that, but whatever. This book resurrects a character that I've known has been around in DC continuity for a long time, the Unknown Soldier. That's about as much as I know.
Right.
I know that it was a World War II crusty character, and he killed people, apparently. Yeah. That's as much as I know, and that's all. You don't even need to know that. So that's important. What's happened here is that Josh Dysart has come in and rebooted, or at least taken up that idea of the unknown
It's like a
soldier.
legacy character.
Yes, and applied it to a real world story today. So what he's got going on is a story that takes place in Africa, where this doctor
Unknown. Dr. Old
Bwanga Moses. No, he's a real doctor. He decides to go back to Uganda.
Well, he was born there, then
Yes.
he was taken out because of the Civil War, raised in the U.S., became a doctor, and
Very
then he goes
successful
back
doctor.
to Africa to be a doctor there.
And he basically gets embroiled in the ongoing conflicts that are going on there. Things that are very complicated that I'm not going to try to explain, but Dysart knows this stuff.
He's very passionate about Africa. If you read the extra material in this
Yes.
book, he's been there a lot. He writes extensively on his website, his personal website, about Africa. So he decided to do a comic to bring awareness to the African plight.
And with me, I started reading this in issues, and I got off because one chunk at a time, it's fairly bleak. But I went back and I read it sort of in one piece later, and I think that works a lot better for me. Your mileage may vary or whatever. It really spends a lot of time digging its teeth into the culture of what's going on in Uganda and other war-torn places in Africa. And it's one of those things where it's very violent, but he's not necessarily trying to solve the problem.
It's also not like exploitatively violent. It's
No, it
violent
isn't.
to show how bad things are there. It's not like he's getting off or he wants you to get off on the violence.
Definitely. And I just, at first, when I was reading the issues, I had a hard time finding anybody to sort of latch onto. The second time through, I found that the doctor, I found a lot more interesting. There's a CIA character who sort of comes in and out, and I found that character, like, you don't know what side he's on, but you want to know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And, this is the first volume of, I think it's the first 6 issues, and it doesn't end. I mean, it's not like it's ongoing.
It's not a complete arc. Yeah.
No, but it's a taste, and if you read this, you'll decide if you want to keep going or not, because there's enough stuff to sort of hook you in and get you going further. Basically, he ends up in the bush with a bunch of kids, and he's protecting them. And what happens is the doctor starts hearing voices in his head, and he picks up a gun, and suddenly he's a very badass soldier.
Well, he's basically imbued with the spirit of the unknown soldier,
Yes.
who is this ultimate soldier.
Yeah.
So now he's the ultimate soldier. He's been hurt really badly by these rebels, so he takes it to the rebels, and I think it's very challenging. It's a very important work. This is very risky in terms of the marketplace. And
It is, and I think that they're going to have a hard time with a lot of sales.
it was Eisner nominated.
It's worth but it's one of those things like it's going to be a critical darling in a way. But
Right.
to get a lot of people to read it
It's a tough subject to deal to.
It is because it's real, and you kind of like, what are comics to you? Are comics escape vehicles to you, or your entertainment or whatever? In the same way that Hotel Rwanda is not necessarily a movie that you want to watch on a Saturday night for fun.
The Africa episodes of ER.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't watch those anymore.
You didn't watch those?
Those were
No, I
good.
did. I
Good,
did.
they were good.
It slowed down the whole story.
It did. No, it did because it was challenging.
Yes, it was. And the whole time, the conflict going on in the doctor is he's got the spirit of the unknown soldier in him, which is kill, 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 destroy the bad guys. But he's he's a doctor. He's there to save lives, and so there's this
Hippocratic
internal
I like
conflict going on.
I like the sort of not argument, but sort of the clashing philosophy between his inner voice and his own voice.
And it's not incredibly clear a lot of times what's happening.
If he's crazy or if it's
Yeah. And at first I found that confusing, but it works because that's actually what the character is going through, and he's trying to decide how much of his old life he wants to keep, and if he really wants to make a difference, and what he's willing to give up for that, and there's all these horrible things going on about, like, a lot of the rebel soldiers are kids, so that you've got 12 and 14-year-olds with machine guns, AK-47s, and they're doing horrible things to other people and kids and nuns, and it's a bleak.
It feels very
book.
authentic. I've never been to Africa, but
We researched the hell out of it.
yeah, he's been there many times. He's taken a lot of photographs. A lot of the stuff that's references from the photographs he took when he's been there a few times.
And Josh Dysart is a great writer.
He's not a guy you could ever accuse of half-assing. If anything else, it's almost too intense at times. But the thing is, there's no place in this book for lightheartedness so far.
No.
It wouldn't fit. So if you had a jokey character, the closest you get is the CIA agent.
Who's more roguish than joking.
Well, the reason for that, he's been stationed in the middle of Uganda for a really long time, and he's just, this is how he gets by. Because it's such a horrible existence, and he can't win. His government versus the other government, there's no getting ahead.
Well, I think it's interesting in that, we talked about, kind of Battlefields as a, kind of World War II book, and this is really kind of like a modern war book.
It's war as it exists today.
Yeah, exactly. And taking that character of the unknown soldier and the history of that with the kind of war stories and telling it in a present day one in the battlefield that people are dealing with in Africa is really ballsy.
it's a story that you also like. It has no. You can't read this, and there's nothing.
It's not black and white.
There's nothing that you could make up in a fantasy book that's going to be worse than this thing that is mostly a real book. And there is a fantasy element to it, but it's
the spirit of the unknown
yeah,
soldier.
It's
and
minor
all
though.
that.
I mean, really, you could take that out of it and you'd still have something. But it's a hook. It's a good hook. I don't want to say it isn't. There's something about the image of the unknown soldier who has his face and head all bandaged up that really works with this. And what they've done is transported it to a different setting and given it a whole other flavoring that makes it relevant to today. And I mean, really, the only choice for you as a reader is not whether it's good or not. It is, but it's whether this is something you want to consume as entertainment.
Right, it's serious and yeah. So, but I'm glad that books like this exist. I mean, I think it's important.
And I love that they do, and they're really important. And it's sad a little bit that, they're not going to get as much note, but even more sadder is that there are things like this to write about. I want to talk about Alberto Ponticelli a little bit. I assume he's Italian. Might be. The art is incredibly energetic and kinetic. And when you actually stop and you look at it on any given page or panel, it seems sort of very loose. When you back up and you take a step back and you see what he's doing with all these different kinds of people, he has to draw Africans, he has to draw Americans and white people, and they all look different. They all have a different thing. And he does a really good job with it. And he also he's really good at drawing fear.
Yeah.
I don't mean to, and not in an exploitative way, but like the emotions are coming off the page.
But also the backgrounds and the environment they're in.
Yes.
I was
Really
really
captured
impressed
it,
by that, by the villages and the jungles. And I mean, you really get a sense of place in this book.
Yeah, he really captured the feeling of the African kind of war-torn area really well.
And that's what a storyteller in a comic book should be doing. So it's perfect for the story. Is
great.
Is my point.
Cool.
There's a lot of Italians drawing comics these days.
Yeah, good for them.
Maybe
It's a good comic book.
They have a sweatshop somewhere.
work for garlic.
So if you want to check out any of these books, you can go to ifanboy.com. There'll be a post about this video. We'll have links where you can go buy them on Amazon. Check them all out yourselves.
Also $10.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
$10 for your first trade.
They have a first trade program.
Exactly.
You can send us an email at contact@ifanboy.com. It's $105.
$14.99.
This one is $105.
Yeah.
You can send us a voicemail, or you can call however you want to do it at 888-FANBOYS, which is 326-2697.
Excellent. So thanks for watching. Good books. Weekending.
We've really got to work on our...
Sneerbeard.
All right.
We need to think about it. Cold open before we hit record.
Okay. Probably should have started like that.
Sneerbeard.
Called open after, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Sneerbeard.
All right. I'll intro and throw it to you.
Where's
Okay.
my book? Luckily it was within arm's reach.
All right. Turn the TV off.
Sneerbeard.
Sneering,